Hey guys, what's happening? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we'll be taking a look at Winchester, the 2018 horror film directed by the Spierig brothers, starring Helen Mirren, Jason Clarke, and the outstanding Sarah Snook. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the story, its themes, as well as the rich history from which the film draws upon. The movie essentially revolves around Sarah Winchester, heiress to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, who was said to have inherited a 50% stake in her husband's company, which had been passed on to her after his death, along with $20 million, which in today's standards would be approximately $500 million. After losing her daughter when the child was only 6 weeks old due to malnutrition, Sarah Winchester found it difficult to find joy in her life. 14 years after the death of her daughter Annie, her father-in-law, Oliver Winchester, who had been the owner and treasurer of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, passed away, followed shortly by the death of his son William Winchester, Sarah's husband. This unfortunate sequence of events led to her inheriting much of the company and her family's immense wealth, which at that time made her one of the richest women in the world. Convinced that her husband's death, along with the death of many of her family members, was related to spirits that had died at the hands of the repeater rifles seeking vengeance and retribution, Sarah decided to move herself and her family across the coast from Connecticut to San Jose, California, hoping to distance herself from the darkness. This move was also fueled by a medium named Adam Coons, who'd explained that she needed to build a large home with numerous rooms to keep the spirits at peace, or else she would die, and this news sent the already troubled woman spiraling. In total, between 500 to 600 rooms were built during her time, though only 161 rooms currently remain at the Winchester estate. The home also had a whopping 2,000 doors, 10,000 windows, 47 stairways, 47 fireplaces, 40 staircases, 13 bathrooms and 17 chimneys, along with a handful of nifty inventions that she designed to make her life and the life of her servants easier. According to legend, Sarah would also lock herself in a specifically designed seance room in the middle of the house that only she had access to, which could only be opened with a single key that she carried with her at all times. This special room was unique in that it had a single entrance and 3 exits, and every night without fail, Sarah would enter the room at 2 AM, where she would communicate with some of the spirits directly, who then basically dictated how they wanted the home to be constructed and how they wanted the rooms to look. These designs that she sketched early in the morning would then be passed on to the carpenters, who worked on the home 24 hours a day over a period of 20 years. I think it's also important to note that these guys were paid 3 times the going rate in order to ensure that there were at least 16 carpenters on hand for every shift, which meant that the house was in a constant state of flux and change. The film essentially borrows these elements and constructs a narrative that saw Sarah building these rooms to satiate each of the spirits that came to her, and by constructing these rooms, which were replicas of the locations they had died in, Sarah was essentially giving them the opportunity to relive their final moments in the hopes that this would enable them to find some sort of peace. Now, most of these spirits had suffered tremendous loss and were actually friendly. However, on occasion, there would be malevolent spirits that sought nothing less than vengeance, and unfortunately for Sarah, she was unable to see their intentions until the rooms were finally built. Due to the seemingly random construction and never-ending works that were occurring at the Winchester estate, the board of directors at the Winchester Repeating Arms Company decided to send over a doctor named Eric Price to determine whether Sarah Winchester was of sound mind, and whether she was able to continue running the company. It should also be noted that this course of action was not in the best interests of Sarah, but a tactic used to strip her of her rightful stake in the company. In the film, the doctor is even told that he would be paid double the going rate, provided he give them the assessment that they desired. And while the doctor initially believed that Sarah had been constructing the rooms as a direct result of guilt that she had felt for her family essentially creating weapons of destruction that changed the format of war forever, he'd come to realize that there was more to her story than meets the eye. Just to put things into perspective, up until the development of the Winchester rifles, most of the rifles like the Springfield and the Volcano rifle, which you can use in the awesome game Red Dead Redemption, were single shot, which meant that once you fired a shot, you had to take some time to reload. But the repeater rifle had its own magazine, enabling you to fire a number of shots before needing to reload. Though the early designs lacked the power of the Volcano and Springfield due to the small cartridges they had to use, by the time they got to the Model 1876 Winchester repeater rifle, which used larger cartridges, the stage had been set for the company to begin dominating arms production in the West. Throughout history, the repeater rifle is considered to have enabled early settlers to tame the West, and the gun was used by pioneers, bandits, and lawmen alike, with many reports of sheriffs that were equipped with the Winchester rifles managing to single-handedly take on gangs that were limited to single-shot rifles. Given all of this, and the visible effect this was having on the landscape, it's no wonder that Sarah Winchester felt a bit of guilt for what her family had created.
I understand the Winchester is still considered the superior rifle on the market, ma'am.
Superior? Superior at what? Indiscriminate killing.
The film begins in 1906 with the continued construction of the Winchester mansion, occupied by Sarah Winchester, her niece Marion Marriott, and her son Henry, along with the numerous servants and carpenters that worked in the home round the clock. It's here that we begin to see a mysterious entity seemingly possess the young Henry, and when his mother Marion followed her son around the house, he led her to a stairway that was blocked before telling her that he was coming, in reference to a spirit that was about to begin haunting the family. At the same time this is happening, the Winchester Company hired Dr. Eric Price to stay at the home and assess the mental condition of Sarah Winchester, whom they believe was unfit to remain in charge of the company. Before he even arrives at the home, we note that the doctor was an abuser of medication, taking a particular liking to laudanum, which was essentially a mixture of opium, morphine, and codeine. This dependency on narcotics and ladies of the night is explained as being his way of coping with the death of his wife Ruby, who had taken her life frustrated that her husband did not believe her when she told him that she was seeing spirits. Within the first day of his arrival, Eric begins having visions of ghosts, which he attributes as a side effect of the drugs he'd been taking. Henry is also possessed once again, with the malevolent spirit directing him to leap off the roof, and while the numerous workers below were unable to spot the kid directly above them, Eric, who was wandering through the property, sees the child and manages to catch him before he hits the ground, saving his life in the process. Dr. Price then begins his analysis of Sarah the very next day, and while the Winchester Company had sought him out to do the assessment, it's later explained that Sarah was actually the one that had picked him out in particular, as he had himself died for 3 minutes as a result of his wife accidentally shooting him, and as the story unfolds, we come to discover that he too was connected to the home. During his first talk with Sarah, she admits that she had a fear of ghosts, but also that she believed that she could help them move on, which was the very reason she had been constructing rooms on behalf of them. Sarah also notifies Eric that she was aware of his drug problem, and tells him that in order for him to stay at the home, she would need to confiscate his supply. Though he's initially agitated by this, we come to realize that this was an important step for both of them, helping the doctor to clean up his act, but also giving him a clear head with which he could perform a more accurate assessment. It should also be noted that she knew that he would eventually begin seeing the very same spirits, and had wanted to ensure that he could tell the difference between a hallucination and a genuine encounter with these spirits. As the film unfolds, Eric has continued to be startled by strange happenings in the home, from doors and windows moving of their own accord to apparitions that appear to him in the dark, leading him to question his own sanity. And the very next day, Sarah shows him a list that she had of all the people that had died at the hands of the Winchester rifles, including Eric himself, who, as mentioned before, was shot in the chest attempting to prevent his wife from taking her life. After being revived, Eric had essentially kept the bullet and refurbished it before engraving the words "Together Forever," something Ruby would say to him on a number of occasions. Throughout history, though the number 13 was considered to be unlucky, Sarah Winchester had seen it as quite the opposite, and had used the number in many ways with regards to the construction of her home. In the film, it's explained that the rooms that contained the spirits were sealed with 13 nails that kept the peaceful spirits at bay until they found peace. And while the real Sarah Winchester didn't use 13 nails to seal the rooms, the number was scattered around the house, with many of the stairs in the home containing 13 steps, the ceilings containing 13 panels, and the home containing 13 bathrooms in total. In addition to this, the 13th bathroom also had 13 stairs that led to it, as well as 13 windows that surrounded it. On top of all of this, when Sarah had passed away, her will was divided into 13 parts with 13 signatures, supporting the notion that she believed the number was lucky. Just like clockwork, Henry is possessed once more, but this time attempts to kill Sarah with a Winchester rifle under the control of the dark spirit before being stopped by Eric and his mother. As things begin taking a turn for the worse, the heiress of the Winchester fortune instructs her staff to leave the home while she personally attempted to rid it of the dark spirit that ruthlessly haunted her family. It's here where Eric is confronted by one of the butlers we had seen throughout the film, who reveals that he was the very spirit that had sought to destroy the Winchester family. And when Eric speaks to Sarah about the incident, they both identify him as Benjamin Block, a Confederate States Army soldier that had lost both brothers in the Civil War at the hands of those that were armed with Winchester rifles. Furious that his family had been taken from him, Ben had then proceeded to shoot up the main Winchester office, where he massacred every worker before being shot dead by lawmen who themselves were armed with Winchester repeater rifles. We then realized that the last room that Sarah had constructed was the very room Benjamin had died in, and the same room that Henry was pointing towards early in the film before telling his mother that someone was coming for them. Now, as Sarah and Eric attempt to communicate with Ben by offering their genuine condolences for the pain and suffering he'd endured, the vengeful spirit unleashes his full power by seemingly causing the 1906 San Francisco earthquake to occur, which tears the home apart, killing the remaining 2 servants that were helping Sarah and Marion, while simultaneously separating the Winchester family and Eric. Eric is then surrounded by a number of friendly ghosts that had broken out of their rooms to help him, and he's soon met by Ruby in the garden room she'd asked Sarah to build, which was a recreation of the one her and Eric had died in, explaining the doctor's connection to the Winchester estate. Ruby then reveals that she'd been misdiagnosed by her husband as being unwell whenever she reported seeing and hearing spirits. Though his inability to accept that she was telling the truth led to her taking her own life, Ruby comforts him and explains that while he had made the mistake of not helping her, he now had the opportunity to right his wrongs by assisting the Winchester family, and we see him using the very bullet that had killed him to destroy Benjamin. With all that he'd seen at the home and the experiences he'd gone through, Eric writes the official assessment of Sarah Winchester, in which he declares her sane, allowing her to remain in control of the company until her death. However, by the end of the film, we see a nail falling from one of the rooms that had been sealed, indicating that another spirit was about to cause trouble at the Winchester estate.
Hello?
Well, that's all for today, folks. Big thanks to all of you guys who requested we take a closer look at Winchester. Don't forget to hit subscribe and click the notification icon to stay up to date on all my content, and if there's anything else you'd like to request, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Niyat here with Film and Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
Henry. Henry, it's me.